10 spine-chilling tales of sinister roommates. Discover the forbidden truths. They hidden. Lucy Martinez stood at the crumbling threshold of her new home, heart racing, the whisper of unseen secrets curling around her. She had left shadows behind in her old life, but the air here felt thick, charged with a haunting promise. Old wood creaked beneath her feet like a warning. She couldn't shake the feeling that the house was watching, waiting for something or someone. As she stepped inside, the chill wrapped around her shoulders like an unwelcome embrace. "Welcome to the haunted mansion," Sam shouted, throwing an arm around her. He was all smiles and mischief, his carefree attitude a welcome relief from Lucy's nagging worries. "Pizza's here. It's not a party until we eat." Around the table, laughter and playful banter washed over the tension in Lucy's chest. Avery, with her sharp words and clever smirk, began a story about the town's dark history. "You know, this place used to be an old speakeasy," she snickered, eyes glinting with mischief. Nobody noticed the shadow flit by the window, a quick flash, then gone. Night fell, and as they celebrated their fresh start with greasy slices of pizza, muffled whispers filled the air. Lucy froze, fork suspended mid-air, the sound creeping up her spine. Sam's laughter masked it, but she could swear the house inhaled deeply, the air growing heavier, laced with a sense of dread. Was she imagining it? The first real crack in their camaraderie came like a clap of thunder. Avery stumbled into the living room, eyes wide, laptop clutched in shaking hands. "You guys won't believe this," she breathed, paler than normal. "My laptop, it has messages on it." "About me?" Lucy squinted, confusion mixing with discomfort. "Messages? Like what?" "Secrets. Betrayal." Avery blurted, her voice trembling. "It's like someone is watching us." "Right, because it's not like you had too much to drink last night," Jake interjected, his fingers twitching nervously at his sketchbook. But darkness began to weave itself into their interactions. Sam's debts clawed at them, a persistent reminder of danger lurking just outside. Lucy felt her anxiety mount, the knot in her stomach tightening. Before they could shake it off, a delivery truck rumbled up their driveway, dropping off a wooden box marked with unrecognizable symbols. Tremors of fear coursed through Lucy as each of them stared in silence, the shadows creeping along the walls, listening. What did the neighbors know? The retired cop watching them from his porch, the handyman who lingered too long. Something sinister lurked just beneath the surface. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Lucy's breath hitched when Jake shared his sketches of shadowy figures, his uncanny ability to capture what was unseen. Each drawing pulsed with fear, limbs twisting in ways that shouldn't exist. They could feel the walls closing in, the whispers growing louder each night. And then it happened. A night brimming with electricity turned into chaos, the lights flickered, and a chilling voice echoed through the house, "Trust no one." The words chilled them. Lucy's heart pounded, the burden of their secrets too heavy. Was it the house or themselves that terrified them more? As the door to the basement creaked ominously, thick with darkness, Lucy felt the weight of every unspoken truth pressing against her chest. "We need to go down there. It might be the only way," she stammered, panic knotting her throat. The unsettling echoes of betrayal loomed over them, an unseen force tying them to this forsaken dwelling. Shadows twisted and beckoned from deep below, daring them to dive into an abyss where betrayal and courage awaited, just out of reach. The basement door loomed before them, a dark maw of uncertainty. Lucy could barely breathe, her heart pounding inside her chest like a frantic drum echoing through the heavy silence. The air around them felt charged, prickling her skin as an unseen weight settled upon their shoulders. I don't think we should," Jake stammered, glancing at the shadows flitting by the edges of the light. These things, they don't ever end well. Do you have a better idea? Avery shot back, her voice high and taut. The tension hung thick, almost gelatinous, as their eyes darted between one another, measuring fear and resolve. Sam. Lucy turned to him, hoping for reassurance. Instead, he stood frozen, his vibrant laughter snuffed out. If this is really happening, we have to find out, Lucy said, determination hardening her voice, even as her stomach churned violently. Someone had carved this fate for them, and they could no longer run from it. Okay, Sam replied, gulping hard. Together, they approached the door, each step heavier than the last. As Lucy's fingers brushed the cold metal handle, the rusted hinges protested, squealing like tortured souls when she pulled it open. A cold wind seeped out, filled with the scent of mildew and something else, something metallic that made Lucy's stomach churn. The darkness beckoned, swirling shadows coalescing into indistinguishable forms at the bottom of the stairs. It was a void, a bottomless pit that shimmered with danger. Stay close, Lucy urged as they descended. Their footsteps echoed in the narrow space, the wooden steps creaking ominously beneath them, a reminder that the house might just collapse under the weight of its secrets. As they reached the bottom, a dim light switch sparked to life, flickering uncertainly in the murky darkness. The beam of light danced along the stone walls, illuminating a workshop filled with scraps of broken furniture and tarnished tools. But what caught Lucy's eye was a wall of photographs, stuck haphazardly, each one a captured moment frozen in time. Wait, Avery gasped, stepping closer. Her hand hovered over one photo, fingers trembling. Who are these people? Lucy leaned in, her breath hitching in her throat. Each face looked familiar yet distorted, their eyes hollow, mouths twisted in screams. And unmistakably, there was a photo of Jake. It showed him, terrified, in a part of the house they had yet to explore. What the hell? Jake whispered, stepping back, his face pale. The air grew colder, and they could feel the pulse of malevolence radiating from the images, wrapping around them like a serpent ready to strike. A sudden crash echoed from above, rattling their surroundings. We should go upstairs. Sam shouted, anxiety saturating his voice. But before anyone could react, a loud whisper slithered through the basement, chilling their bones. You must stay. A cold dread settled like a fog, filling the space with an unmistakable presence, something dark and ancient holding them captive. The pictures shimmered menacingly, as though their subjects could leap out at any moment, dragging them into their own horror. Trust no one, the voice reverberated, no longer a distant echo. It was close now, suffocating. Lucy felt like she was drowning, a creeping panic tightening around her throat. The basement transformed, walls closing in as shadows lurked just beyond the reach of light. What do we do? She squeaked, her voice barely a whisper. Suddenly, the lights went out, and with it, the basement drowned in darkness. Each of them stood frozen, breaths shallow, minds racing. As heartbeats thundered in the silence, a new dread enveloped the room. We need to find another way out now. Avery insisted, panic laced in her voice. The cold air was filled with their frantic whispers, each word climbing the walls, clawing for release. But the oppressive darkness tightened its grip around them, and the chill of betrayal seeped deeper. As their eyes strained to pierce the void, a low, guttural growl echoed around them, shattering the stillness. What was waiting just beyond reach? Lucy's instincts screamed. This was no longer just a game. The shadows pressed in tighter, each breath a struggle, as a sinking realization hit her, they were far from safe. Among us, the voice hissed, fading into the dark. The crushing fear settled in her gut as she realized, they were not alone. What awaited them in the depths of this house? They stood still, swallowed by the choking darkness, breath hitching in unison. The growl echoed again, this time deeper, reverberating off the walls like the unfurling of a sinister flag. Lucy felt the hair on her arms stand on end. Do you hear that? She whispered, each word weighed down by dread. Avery nodded, her face pale in the fading beam of light. What is that? There was a tremor in her voice that cut through the oppressive silence. It felt wrong, so wrong, their bodies tingling with a kind of fear that clawed at their insides. "Maybe it's just," Sam began, but the trailing end of his sentence faded into nothingness, swallowed by a new sound, the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Soft but deliberate, shuffling across the creaky floor above. "Someone's upstairs," Jake choked out, his voice barely a murmur, a stark contrast to the growing tension that surrounded them. "We need to call for help." "They won't hear us," Avery insisted, her fear morphing quickly into panic. "We have to get out of here, now." But Lucy remained rooted, her gaze focused on the wall of photos behind her. Among the faces frozen in torture, she sensed something, the hint of a pattern. "These people, they look like us," she said, barely above a breath. Avery turned, eyes widening as she scanned the images again. "It can't be," she breathed, disbelief playing on her features. She reached out and touched one photo, and as she did, the heavy silence was split by a voice, clear and sharp, almost mocking. "Why not stay a while?" The whisper seemed to come from all around, closing in like fingers clutching at their throats, sending a wave of icy nausea coursing through Lucy. "No, not again," she gasped, recalling the old tales her grandmother once told about the house and its dark history. It lured its guests, seducing them with false safety before feasting on their souls. The photos began to shift and writhe in front of her eyes. One by one, they morphed into grotesque versions of her friends. Jake's smile twisted into a toothy grin, Sam's eyes gouged out, Avery's face melting into a mask of flesh and despair, each image calling out for help, yet begging for the torment to continue. "Lucy!" Jake shouted, pulling her back as fear ripped through him. "We have to move." Something cold brushed past Lucy, fleeting yet undeniable. She felt its presence dancing along her spine. "We have to get out. This isn't just a basement. But there's nowhere to go." Sam yelled, his voice cracking, panic surging like a tide. "Down the hall. There has to be another way," Lucy urged, turning to the steps where they had barely come from. She was trapped but determined not to let the fear take control. Yet, as they moved toward the stairs, the silence morphed into a distant chanting, echoing against the stone walls, mechanical, rhythmic, and deliberate. "Trust us, stay with us, shut up, shut up." Avery screamed, her hands pressed to her ears. But the sound seeped through, burrowing into her mind, clawing at the back of her thoughts. The light flickered again, plunging them into a brief but disorienting darkness before illuminating the remnants of the workshop in a sickly glow. Shadows danced in the corners, flickering like flames, luring, beckoning. From the depths of the darkness, a figure began to take shape, too tall and twisted to be human, its limbs elongated unnaturally, head just above the ceiling, grinning in a way that made Lucy's stomach lurch. "Get out!" she screamed, and they rushed, mindlessly scrambling toward the stairs, shadows chasing close behind, whispers flooding their ears with desperate threats. As they neared the steps, something grabbed her ankle, a hand, bony and cold. "No! Help me!" Avery cried, but the darkness pulled her down, her voice fading into a chilling echo. "Don't look back!" Lucy shouted at Jake and Sam, their faces twisted in horror. They stumbled on, but Lucy was frozen, the presence suffocating her. Somewhere deep inside, a question blossomed: was the basement the trap, or was it just the beginning? Just as she gathered herself to run, the growl shattered the moment, rising into a furious roar that reverberated in her core. This place wanted them, it would never let them go. "Where are we going?" Sam yelled in despair, glancing back with wide eyes. Suddenly, Lucy remembered a way out, though it was a risk full of dread. But could desperation lead to salvation? With urgency, she turned to the hidden door at the back of the basement, barely visible in the dying light. "Follow me." The shadows lunged. Did they have a chance? What lay beyond that door, if there was indeed an escape? The wooden door creaked ominously as Lucy pushed it open, her heart slamming against her ribs. It felt like stepping into a tunnel, a narrow passage swallowed by darkness. She could barely see the walls, but a heavy mustiness clung to the air, thick and suffocating. The whispers grew louder, swirling in her ears, drowning out her racing thoughts. Lucy! What if it's a dead end? Jake shouted, terror evident in his wide eyes. Sam remained silent, panic tightening his features as they crowded behind her. Just stay close. It has to lead somewhere. She insisted, forcing herself forward, nearly stumbling as the floor sloped downward beneath her feet. She could hear Sam's breath hitching in fear, a sound that mirrored her own growing dread. As they ventured deeper, the air turned colder, a bone-chilling draft curling around them, coaxing goosebumps from their skin. Each step echoed in the void, a drumbeat of impending doom. They rounded a corner and emerged into a larger chamber. The faint light from above flickered into this space, revealing walls lined with more photos, twisted faces frozen in agony, just like before. But these weren't just images, they were alive, sneering and shrieking soundlessly. Why do they look like? Sam began, but Lucy cut him off. Not now. She almost stumbled backward, hardening herself against every instinct urging her to flee. They had to keep moving. At the center of the room, an altar of sorts emerged from the shadows, a twisted, grotesque shape made from an amalgamation of human bones. It was as if the very walls dripped with anguish, pulsating with an evil life of their own. What is this place? She gasped, a chill racing down her spine. The growl echoed again, reverberating through the chamber, sending flashes of terror through their group. Come on, we need to find another way out. Avery cried, breaking free of her shock. As they descended further into the horrid chamber, Lucy felt roots of panic twisting tightly around her heart. If the echoes of those trapped voices in the photos were to be believed, what lay ahead could be their end. Wait! Lucy suddenly froze as she spotted something, a glint of metal half buried behind the altar. What are you doing? Jake urged, his eyes darting nervously between the altar and the darkened corners of the room. Just a second, she managed, kneeling down to claw through the dust. Her fingers brushed against something cold, an old, rusted key, engraved with a symbol she recognized from a photo on the wall. Lucy! Hurry! Sam shouted, glancing back, his breath coming out in frantic bursts as the shadows thickened around them, creeping closer and closer. With the key clutched tightly in her palm, Lucy sprang back to her feet. Let us move. They darted back toward the door they had come through, but something shifted in the shadows on the wall, something larger, darker watching. The growl came again, louder, as they raced back the way they had come. There's something behind us. Jake yelled, fear igniting adrenaline within them. The narrow path twisted and turned, the entrance to the basement looming ahead as they felt the darkness swallow them whole. They emerged back into the claustrophobic hallway, the air thickening with despair as silence fell like a shroud. What if we need to go back? The other door? Avery asserted, desperation creeping into her voice. No. We can't go back. Not now. Lucy insisted, the key's weight like a noose around her neck. But as her thoughts spiraled, doubt bred within her, gnawing at her resolve. They were trapped, helpless unless, she hesitated. What's on the other side of that door? Just then, the ground began to shake, a low rumble that resonated from deep within the earth. Shadows flickered again, but this time they coalesced into forms, figures stepping forward from the gloom, their faces twisted in silent misery. Stay with us, the mantra grew more insistent, rising above the rumble of the ground. Lucy clutched the key tightly, a lifeline against the terror closing in around them. Should we try the key? Sam's voice trembled. But in that moment, Lucy wasn't so sure if she wanted to escape or unravel the cursed depths of this place. Do we dare? She whispered, glancing back at the advancing figures. Time was running out, and as her friend's eyes filled with fear, Lucy had to make a choice. Would they stay, confront whatever ancient evil awaited, or turn and run, knowing it might be their last chance? The whispers grew louder, an audience urging them forward, blurring the lines of desperate hope and dark madness. The moment stretched, pregnant with anxiety. Would they uncover the truth that lay beyond, or would it consume them whole? The ground trembled beneath their feet, a warning too late to heed. Lucy's heart raced as the shadows whispered their dreadful promises. The figures loomed closer, faces contorted in agony and despair, their spectral hands reaching out for something, maybe them, or perhaps a long-lost connection to a life now forgotten. "Lucy, we have to go." Jake's voice cracked, gripping her arm as if to anchor himself, as if holding tightly could save them from the encroaching darkness. The growls morphed into a twisted symphony, echoing the anguish of tormented souls. It was not just a sound but a feeling, invading her mind, pressing against all her clarity. "Which door?" Avery pressed, glancing between the hallway leading back to the altar and the darkened doorway ahead. "We're running out of time." "Trust me," Lucy breathed, the key a cold weight in her palm. "I think this key, it's meant for that door." Uncertainty lingered in her voice, but the need to push forward surged through her like fire. "Are you sure?" Sam's eyes flickered, panic threading through each syllable. "No, but what else do we have?" She snapped, more harshly than intended. With a deep breath, she turned, heart thundering as she approached the door, its heavy wooden frame looming ominously. The key felt alive, pulsing in her grip as if it anticipated the truth waiting behind the portal. "Lucy!" Jake pleaded, but she could barely register his cry. The figures behind them stirred, as if sensing her resolve. The whispers curled around her, tugging her closer, encouraging her to discover whatever secret lay beyond. The key slipped into the lock, cold metal meeting wood. What if it was a mistake? What if they unleashed something worse? Anxiety clawed at her throat, but it was too late for second thoughts. With a twist, the lock clicked, a sound sharp against the suffocating silence. The door creaked open, a gaping maw into an abyss she could neither comprehend nor resist. A gust of cold wind brushed her cheek, smelling of decay and despair, wrapping around her as she stepped inside. A narrow staircase spiraled downward, illuminated by flickering torches that barely pushed back the oppressive shadows. The whispers amplified, swirling around them like a tempest of fear and foreboding. It felt like they were descending into hell itself, an invitation and a curse tangled in the same breath. "Lucy, wait." Sam's voice was a desperate plea, but she forged ahead, drawn by an unseen force, a faint glimmer of hope rooted in the key's promise. "Come on," she urged, glancing back as her friends hesitated. "We can't go back. Not now. Not when we're so close to answers." They followed, though uncertainty painted their faces. The descent seemed endless, a dark spiral into madness. The walls pulsated with an unnatural energy, alive with every doubt and fear they harbored. A distant echo of laughter bounced off the stones, warped and sinister, intertwining with the frantic beating of her heart. At the base of the stairs, she paused. A massive door stood before them, carved with ominous symbols. Breathing heavily, she placed her trembling hand on it, feeling a hum of energy, resonance of all that had come before. "This isn't right," Jake murmured, fear painted in his eyes. "We're not meant to be here." "Or maybe we are," Lucy replied, her voice stronger than she felt. The key trembled in her hand. "There's only one way to find out." As she inserted the key into the lock, a haunting scream erupted from the depths, drowning out her rationality. The door shuddered, vibrating with a malevolence that sent ice through her veins. She glanced back at her friends, their faces etched with terror. "Move!" she shouted as she turned the key, prepared to face whatever lay beyond. The door swung open, revealing a nightmarish scene bathed in shadow and flickering light. Eyes stared back at her, countless, unblinking, hungry. "What have we unleashed?" Avery gasped, the words barely escaping her lips as the figures began to converge, their whispers harmonizing into a wailing crescendo. Lucy's heart raced as she took her first step inside. But before she could breathe again, the reality of their choice hit her, each figure reaching for her like the depths of a tide. "What's behind us is nothing compared to what waits ahead," she murmured, heart pounding. One final scream shattered the silence, carrying a message from the shadows, leaving her with the stark realization, there might be no escaping the horrors they were about to awaken. What had they unleashed, and would it be their end, or a new beginning? The air thickened as Lucy stepped into the room, the shadows shifting and curling around her like serpents. The torches flickered in a way that felt almost alive, casting grotesque shapes across the walls. There was a heaviness in the air, a tangible sense of dread that weighed her down, making every breath a laborious task. "Lucy, we shouldn't be here," Jake muttered, his voice trembling. He remained at the threshold, the light casting a stark contrast against the darkness that enveloped the room behind her. Avery and Sam followed her in, but their faces mirrored the horror of uncertainty. The figures she'd seen earlier moved closer, their forms a tapestry of nightmares, each one etched with sorrow, anger, and desperation. They were right in front of her, reaching, scratching, whispering secrets that coiled around her mind. "What do you want?" Lucy shouted, resisting the urge to recoil, but the words came out weak and unsure. The figures paused, their eyes wide with unearthly hunger, as if her very voice had summoned their eerie attention. "I think they want us to listen," Sam murmured, trembling as he squinted into the dimness. "They're not here to harm us, not directly." Lucy hesitated, contemplating the dread that brewed just beneath the surface. It was a gamble, dive deeper into the unknown or retreat into the feeble safety of ignorance. Something inside her whispered that understanding was the key, the missing piece that could unlock the torment that gripped them all. "Perhaps it's a message," Lucy breathed, stepping further into the darkness, as if her heart could lead her where her fear dared not tread. The shadows surged forward, voices swirling like a tempest, a cacophony of anguish that left her reeling. "Lucy!" Jake's voice again, sharp and desperate, snapping her back. "Get away from them." But she couldn't. She wouldn't. This was her chance to confront the source of her nightmares, the echoes of despair that haunted her since they entered the cursed place. She reached out a trembling hand, and the figures seemed to flinch in unison, drawn toward her warmth. "Tell me. Please." She half sobbed, half cried, desperate for the truth that might break the tension twisting in her chest. The whispers enveloped her, growing louder, forming words that sent shivers racing down her spine. "Awaken, unseal," they echoed, a chilling chorus that resonated deep within the chamber. "What does that mean?" Avery yelled, a mix of fear and determination in her voice. She stood beside Lucy, eyes wide, heart racing. "What are we supposed to awaken?" There was a shifting at the edges of the darkness, the figures parting slightly to reveal a dimly glowing object at the far end of the room. It filled her with dread yet sparked an intoxicating curiosity, a pulsating orb of light that throbbed as if it had a heartbeat. "Is that?" Sam began, his voice trailing off into a horrified whisper. "I don't know," Lucy admitted, heart hammering in her chest. "But what if?" Before she could finish her thought, a violent shudder racked the room, as though the very walls braced against a great weight. Lucy stumbled, grasping at Avery for balance, the shadows swirling ravenously. The figures behind them keened in unison, sound rising like a wave, crashing down with horrifying clarity. "We need to move. It's waking up." Jake shouted, panic flooding his face as the room darkened further, drawing them closer to the glowing orb like moths to flames. "What if it's a trap?" Avery snapped, urgency threading through her voice. "Then we have to find out now," Lucy declared, feeling the weight of the key in her pocket, an anchor in the chaos. "It's our only chance." The room trembled, and with a guttural growl, the orb burst to life, illuminating the path that twisted deeper into shadows, inviting them further into the unknown. As panic clawed at her mind, a chilling realization settled in: whatever awaited them now was perhaps far more horrific than what lay behind them. The orb's light expanded, pulsating with an energy that felt almost familiar, but the growing darkness around it promised no escape. "Come on!" Lucy shouted, taking the first step toward that terrible glow. But as she did, the whispers surged back, a frantic warning flooding her senses. What awaited might not only be a horror unleashed but a reckoning they couldn't undo. Her heart raced as she felt the ground shift. What had they awakened? And would they live to confront it if they ever left this room at all? The orb pulsed violently, its light illuminating grotesque forms that seemed to slither in the shadows. Lucy's pulse quickened as she edged closer, the pull of its glow irresistible. She could barely hear Jake's panicked voice behind her, but a haze of adrenaline muted everything but the orb's thrum. What if we wake something worse? Jake's words felt distant, lost amidst the chaos that stirred in the room. Then we face it together, Avery insisted. Her voice wavered but held a fierce determination that sent a spark through the group. Stepping closer to the orb, Lucy could see now that its aura was not merely light, it was a swirl of colors, the very spectrum of their fears. She felt an aching connection, a sense of knowing, as if it was whispering secrets only she could understand. As they approached, the figures behind them grew restless, their bodies rippling like water disturbed by a stone. The whispers intensified, a rising tide of sound that crescendoed into a panic-laden frenzy. "Lucy! We need to go!" Sam shouted, but she couldn't move. Then, out of the chaos, a dark tendril whipped out, brushing against her arm like ice. She recoiled, feeling the chills seep into her bones, an instinctive warning crawling up her spine. The figures surged forward, their mouths stretching in surreal howls. Lucy felt the energy shift, the shadows coalesced, creating an elaborate pattern on the ground that beckoned her forward. This wasn't just some aberration, it was a ritual, and they were the offering. "Hold on." Avery reached out, grabbing Lucy's wrist. "We either break this cycle or get consumed by it." In that instant, the orb erupted with light, throwing chaotic shadows across the room. They danced like specters, arms reaching toward the ceiling. The echoes of despair fused with newfound rage, filling the chamber with a cacophony of noise that threatened to drown them. "What do we do?" Jake's voice cracked, despair flooding his features. Lucy looked at him, at her friends, and finally back at the orb. If this was their chance to confront the nightmares, they needed to break through. "We touch it together," she shouted, a creeping resolve taking hold. Just as they joined hands, the orb unleashed a wave of energy that rippled through the room. It blasted them backward, slamming them into the wall as the earth quaked beneath their feet. The glowing light fused with the shadows, forming a vortex that sucked in everything around them, the lingering whispers, the wailing figures, and even the weight of their own fear. They were no longer in control, they plummeted into darkness, each drawn to their own personal hell. Lucy screamed, but the sound collapsed into the void. "You have awoken the truth." A voice echoed, deep and rumbling as it surged around them, blending with the shadows, morphing into a horrific symphony of lost souls. The ground split open beneath Lucy, revealing endless darkness. Was this what awaited them beyond the orb? Suddenly, as quickly as it began, the energy waned. The vortex collapsed, yanking Lucy and her friends from its grip and depositing them on the cold, hard floor of the chamber. They gasped for breath, frantically scanning the darkness. The orb was now dim, its glow reduced to a faint flicker. "Is it over?" Sam breathed, glancing around nervously, but Lucy felt the pulse still lingering in the air, a reminder that what they awoke was merely waiting to be unfurled. "No, it's just begun." A shadow detached itself from the wall, creeping toward them. Lucy's heart raced. This was just the beginning of a horror beyond their understanding. "Find the truth," it whispered, its voice slithering into their minds. If you dare. They were back at the threshold. But this time, they were not alone. Something far worse than they imagined was beginning to stir in the depths of darkness, preparing to unleash its wrath. As the shadow spread, the light from the orb dimmed further. Would they have the courage to confront their fate, or would they succumb to the terrifying secrets waiting to be uncovered? The darkness clung to them like an endless fog, thick and suffocating. Lucy's breath hitched. The cold air felt different now, like it carried a weight, a palpable heaviness that pressed against her chest. Her heart thudded louder than ever. She glanced at her friends, their faces etched with fear, eyes wide and trembling. "We need to move," Jake urged, his voice barely above a whisper. He was already backing away, scanning the shadows as if they might spring at him from all sides. Avery didn't budge. "No. The shadow wants us to run. We can't show fear." She stepped forward, clenching her fists. "We need to hold our ground." The whispering shadow seemed to pulse with her words, reacting as if sensing their hesitation. It twisted and coiled, spilling forward like a black tide, ebbing and flowing around their feet. "Together, remember?" Lucy mustered. "Whatever this is, we face it as one." They nodded, finding comfort in that resolve, hands linking in a tight circle. As they drew close, the shadows pressed in on them, threatening to swallow them whole. The whispers grew louder, forming jagged fragments of sentences that sliced through the air. "You will pay for what you released." A pulse of terror struck Lucy. What did we awaken? Her voice broke, stuttering against the eerie chorus that surrounded them. "Stay focused," Avery commanded, her eyes fierce but betraying a flicker of doubt. "We can't allow the past to consume us. We must confront it." The shadows thickened, crawling up their legs, latching onto their resolve. Lucy inhaled sharply, the weight of countless eyes pressing down on her from the void. A collective heartbeat echoed from the depths. It was slow, rhythmic, yet chaotic, a dark pulse that resonated with their own terror. "Let us dive deeper into the shadows. We have to confront whatever this is," Sam said, swallowing hard. "We just need to stop." Jake shouted, panic bubbling in his chest. "What if it wants us to confront it? What if it's a trap? We're left with no other choice." Avery snapped, desperation tinting her voice. As they debated, the entity's shadows thickened, taking shape. Formless bodies emerged from the dark, flickering like candle flames, their faces twisted in agony. A hideous chorus of screams vibrated the chamber, making Lucy flinch. "Help us, help us, help us," they cried, echoing off the walls, their ghostly hands reaching out with an unsettling intimacy. "I can't do this," Sam gasped. He broke free of their circle, sprinting towards the chamber's far wall. The shadows howled in frustration, stretching forward to catch him, pulling at his limbs with icy tendrils. "Sam!" Lucy cried, horrified. She tightened her grip on Avery's hand. "No! Come back!" Jake shouted, but the pull of the shadows was too strong. They dragged Sam into a whirlpool of darkness, his screams abruptly silenced. "Stay together!" Avery yelled, pulling Lucy away from the edge of panic that threatened to consume them. "Don't let it take you, don't let it separate us." The realization was chilling. This wasn't just a battle, it was a psychological trap made from their fears, manifesting their deepest regrets and vulnerabilities. They weren't just fighting for their lives. They were fighting against the darkest corners of their own minds. The shadows intensified, folding into shapes more defined, grotesque as they twisted and morphed. Images of their past danced in the void, betrayals, weaknesses, the very fears they had hidden. Suddenly, Lucy felt a sharp tug within her, a memory clawing its way to the surface. Ghostly visions swirled, threatening to collapse her sanity. "No!" She gasped as she felt the darkness press against her, the manifestations of her nightmares bearing down, but then, she remembered the orb's glow. Its pulse. "We have to find it," she yelled, pulling Avery towards the faint outline of the orb now flickering at the edge of the passageway, and in that moment of sheer urgency, the shadows recoiled, their wailing becoming a desperate outcry as they shrank back, as if afraid of the orb's reviving energy. "Hold on to it, Lucy. Focus," Avery urged. And just as they stepped forward, a lurking presence emerged, larger and darker than all the shadows combined, a looming dread, eyes glittering with malice. "You think you can escape?" It rumbled, a distortion of all their fears coalescing into one hideous entity. "The truth is a debt and the price is your souls." The orb pulsed once more, but would it be enough to save them? Or would they succumb to the horrors they had awakened, forever etched into the darkness? The shadows retreating, a new dread crept in. The entity loomed closer, filling the space with an overwhelming sense of foreboding. Can you confront what you've ignited? And just like that, Lucy realized there was no turning back. Fear clawed at her mind, but there was no choice left. They had to fight. She squeezed Avery's hand tighter, her heart racing. Would they uncover the truth, or would it ultimately devour them whole, leaving nothing behind? With the weight of terror heavy in the air, they stepped closer to the orb, ready to face the darkness that awaited. Would they find salvation or obliteration? The orb's glow pulsated like a heartbeat, mesmerizing yet unnerving. Lucy and Avery moved toward it, the shadows still clawing at their feet, their energy a suffocating presence. The entity loomed larger, its malevolent grin widening, filled with jagged teeth that glinted like shards of broken glass. "Fools," it hissed. "The light won't save you, it draws you closer to the dark." Lucy could feel the warmth of the orb battling the cold darkness wrapping around her, a flicker of hope in a sea of despair. "We can't stop now," she gasped. "We must, Lucy, behind you." Avery screamed, her voice shrill, turning swiftly. Lucy felt icy fingers wrap around her throat, a chill crawling up her spine. The darkness had evolved. No longer merely shadows, but physical manifestations of everything she dreaded most. She was paralyzed, caught between the palpable terror of the entity and the fragile light of the orb. "Let her go!" Avery shouted, her eyes fierce yet filled with fear, as she tugged at Lucy's arm. The dark hands tightened, pulling Lucy deeper into its cold embrace. A scream froze in her throat, desperation flowing through her like ice water. "Avery! Help!" In a wild burst of strength, she clawed at the shadows, ready to do whatever it took to escape. "We need to press on." To the orb. Just as the entity's eyes flared with malevolent delight, the orb surged with light, momentarily blinding Lucy. She stumbled back, gasping. She could feel the weight of the darkness lessening. Avery had dragged her free, an iron grip amidst the chaos. "I can't hold it for long," Avery cried as the entity recoiled, the anguished spirits flickering into the mist. "Get to the orb." Together, they sprinted for the light. The shadows swirled as a mad tempest, trying to pull them apart, to break their resolve. With each step, doubt coursed through Lucy. Would reaching the orb revive Sam? Or was it merely an illusion promising salvation that would lead them to doom? "Stay with me," Lucy shouted, her voice firm despite the fear that gnawed at her mind. The distance to the orb felt like miles, each step a battle against the unyielding darkness. Avery's breath came quick, her gaze darting around. "Can you see him?" she asked, desperation lacing her tone. "Sam! I can't." Lucy yelled back, her heart heavy with guilt and fear, the memories of Sam's terrified expression flooding her mind. Just then, the air shifted, a chilling whisper sending shivers down their spines. "To save him, you must face what binds you to this darkness." The entity's voice slithered around them like a serpent, coiling tighter, enveloping them in dread. "What do you mean?" Avery demanded, her voice trembling. "A choice," it taunted, the shadows swirling violently once again. "Will you embrace your nightmares, or will you run away? Either path leads to despair." The pulsating light of the orb grew more intense as Lucy and Avery neared it, beckoning with promises of hope and illumination. But a terrible weight pressed upon Lucy. Her fears wouldn't let go. They were there, shadowy figures from her past, urging her to succumb. "Remember what you've done," the entity whispered, drawing closer, its form shifting as if made of liquid night. "Face it, or be forever lost in your regret." Lucy's breath hitched, panic clawing at her chest. "Avery, what if we can't do this?" "We have to." Avery snapped, resolve burning in her eyes. "We owe it to Sam." With determination igniting within her, Lucy made a choice. To the orb. She shouted, feeling the weight of the darkness try to pull her down. The light held the power they needed, yet it was like running toward a freight train. Everything within her screamed to stop. As they thrust themselves forward, trembling hands reaching for the orb, the darkness howled in fury. The shadows coiled tighter, threatening to pull them into the abyss, engulfing them in its icy grip. Then, without warning, the orb erupted in brilliant light, illuminating the chamber in shades of blinding white. Lucy felt a strange energy surge through her, almost like an electric pulse connecting her to everything, the monsters, the shadows, and to Sam. But the grip of the shadows grew desperate, each tendril reaching, yearning to steal them away. You cannot break the chains. With one last determined lunge, Lucy grasped the orb, its warmth flooding her. Suddenly, she found herself surrounded by a vortex of light, the shadows screaming in fury as the brilliance consumed them, yet a flicker of doubt remained. They had made a choice, but would this choice bring salvation or despair? And what about Sam? A voice, softer now, broke through her mind. The truth will find you. As the chamber filled with light, the shadows shrank away, but Lucy couldn't shake the feeling something deeper loomed beyond the radiant glow. Would the truth be a path to freedom, or would it take everything from her? The light enveloped them as they felt the ground shift beneath their feet, a disorienting sensation that left them suspended between despair and hope. As they closed their eyes against the blinding luminescence, the question hung heavily in the air: what awaited them at the end of this path? The light receded like a tide, leaving Lucy, Avery, and Jake crumpled on the basement floor, gasping as they drew in the familiar scent of damp earth mixed with the memories of fear and pain. The orb had vanished, absorbed into the walls, leaving a faint glow in its wake. Lucy's breath quickened when she realized the shadows no longer slithered around them. They had retreated, their whispers a mere echo in the stillness. Sam! Lucy's voice cracked, desperation slicing through her relief. Where is he? Stay calm. Avery urged, scanning the darkness that lingered, hoping against hope. He has to be here. We need to look. Jake's eyes darted to the far corner of the room. There. He pointed. And there, in a patch of dim light, lay Sam sprawled against the cold stone, his breath shallow and labored. Lucy rushed to him, kneeling by his side. Sam! Can you hear me? Panic surged as she cradled his head in her lap. His eyes fluttered open, confusion marring his features. What happened? He rasped, blinking against the fading light. You were caught in the shadows. We thought we lost you. A choking gasp escaped Sam's lips as he pushed himself upright, glancing around the room as if realizing for the first time they were free. The entity, it was going to consume me, he whispered, his face ghost white. We need to get out. Now. Together, they helped Sam to his feet, the weight of everything they defaced still peeling away at their resolve. Lucy felt as if the walls themselves breathed around them, thick with a sense of both despair and newfound strength. We need to find a way out, keep moving. She urged, linking arms with Avery and keeping Sam steady beside her. As they moved toward the stairs, the basement door creaked ominously, urging them forward. Every unsteady step felt charged with life. The air tasted different, clearer somehow, like the wildness of freedom. And something about the house felt lighter, releasing its grip. When they reached the front door, Lucy hesitated, suddenly overwhelmed by previously hidden emotions tangled in the house's darkness. We faced our fears together, she said, her voice soft yet resolute. But we have to carry this with us. Jake placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Every scar, every fear, makes us who we are. We can't forget, but we can move on. The door swung open, daylight flooding their world like a rebirth. The sun streamed in golden rays, warming their weary bodies. As they stepped out, the weight of the old mansion lifted off their shoulders, fading into the distance. Once outside, they turned back to the creaking edifice, shadows flickering in the windows as if bidding them farewell. Lucy shuddered at the thought but felt a swell of determination. The house had shown them the dark corners of their hearts, and they had emerged from that abyss. Let us go home, Sam said hoarsely, clapping a hand on Jake's shoulder. Avery smiled, a flicker of joy breaking through the tears in her eyes. Together. As they walked away, Lucy felt a new sense of clarity. This chapter closed, but it transformed into a new beginning. They would carry their experiences with them, a shield against their shadows. They would face tomorrow and the tomorrows after, united by a bond strong enough to face any darkness ahead. They left the chilling echoes of the house behind, stepping forward into the light of a new dawn, hearts connected, breath steady, ready for whatever life would throw their way next. And there, in the luminous world beyond, Lucy whispered the unsaid words of gratitude. "We did it," she breathed. "And we will keep going." As laughter began to rise between them, it echoed sweetly along the streets, a balm stitched into every wound. They were stronger, they were wiser, and they were finally free. Now, if you loved this conclusion and want more thrilling tales or chilling mysteries, you need to subscribe immediately. Don't miss the next exclusive stories that will send shivers down your spine. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm so we can keep bringing you fantastic content. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending, because your thoughts matter. And for real, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. True fans like you keep this channel alive and kicking.